Without a doubt, one of my favorite aesthetic themes that a character can have is that of a Joker. Specifically, the Joker from a deck of cards. It's creepy, it's weird, and there's just something really cool about all that. Now, unlike many other types of characters which are almost exclusively good guys or bad guys, a Joker character could fit perfectly alongside either of the two factions and not looked at out of place. Not to mention that the vast majority of these Joker characters are psychopaths, and psychopaths are just really interesting characters. I mean, after all, everyone can relate to a psychopath in some way on some level, because, after all, it really only takes one terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. So, with that said, are you ready to plunge into the depraved mind of some of the best Jokers? Because I am. Hello Internet, Jojo here, and welcome to Ideashock, where all people are welcome regardless of your sanity level. Though, my personal belief is that the lower the sanity, the higher the fun. Anyways, you know why you're here, so I hope you have a firm grasp on your sanity, or at least some kind of hold on it. You don't want it to escape, because we are about to dive into a world of madness and Jokers. First up, we're going to talk about one of my favorite psychopaths, because I'm a sane human who can have favorite psychopaths, Hisoka from Hunter x Hunter. One of Hisoka's greatest feats of strength comes from when he fought Gon during the Heaven's Arena story arc. He showed that while he does look kinda lanky, he's actually incredibly physically strong, and he shows this by ripping up and launching a massive stone tile across the arena. In order to find how much force Hisoka must have generated, we can compare this stone to a different but identical one. Doing that, we find the edges of this stone are about 270 centimeters long and it has a thickness of about 19 centimeters. With those dimensions, this flagstone must have a volume of about 1,400,000 cubic centimeters, which, assuming this is a hard stone like granite, translates to about 3,871 kilograms. Considering this stone basically pulverizes itself on impact, we can use that energy to find the speed it was moving at. Using this 1,400,000 cubic centimeters and applying the value for granite pulverization, 250 joules per cubic centimeter, we find that this had to have hit the stands with more than 352 megajoules of energy. Now that we know this, we can use the kinetic energy formula to find the speed it was moving at. So, with an energy value of 352 megajoules and a weight of 3,871 kilograms, this flagstone must have been moving at over 950 miles per hour, or about Mach 1.5. Now that we have the stone's speed, we now need to find its acceleration in order to find the produced force. So, while moving at this speed, this flagstone would have covered 36.14 meters in just 0.085 of a second. Assuming that this reached its max speed as it impacted on the stands, it must have been accelerating at just under 5,000 meters per second squared. Using all of these numbers, we can find that for Hisoka to kick this stone and send it moving at this speed, he would have needed to produce over 19,330,700 newtons of force. We can just simplify this to a simple 2,100 tons of force. However, if we apply the total distance the stone moved across the arena, we end up finding that Hisoka must have produced a massive 703 megajoules of energy. So, Hisoka might look like a, well, I was gonna say creepy clown, but honestly, Hisoka is actually a lot less creepy than a regular clown. So I guess at least he has that going for him, so that's good, I guess. Anyways, in short and, well, kind of long, Hisoka is incredibly strong. Though, the next Joker that we're going to talk about is something else completely different. Now, if you watched my first video in this series where I talked about fire characters, then you already know my love for fire. And now that I've mentioned my love for psychopaths in this video, you might assume that my favorite character in Fire Force is Joker, and, well, you'd be right. Of course, I have other reasons for liking him besides the fact that he's a psychopath and has fire powers. He also has a fantastic eye patch. Anyways, that's getting way off topic. When Joker makes his debut in the series, he does this by infiltrating the Fire Force's rookie games in order to have a conversation with Shinra. After a brief scuffle, Joker uses some infernal ashes to cause an explosion that took out the entire top floor of the building that they were in. Comparing the fire soldiers to the door in this panel, and then this door to the top floor of the next panel, we can find the dimensions of all the objects in the affected area. The top floor comes in at about 14 meters in diagonal and about 5 meters tall. Assuming that this floor is a square, these dimensions would give a floor space of roughly 1,050 square feet. The average office building budgets about 90 square feet per room, and using this along with the thickness of typical building walls, 4 inches for interior wall and 9 inches for exterior, we end up with about 11.7737 offices fitting inside this top floor. We know that the walls are almost entirely made of metal, and from the wall thickness of an office, we find that Joker's explosion must have destroyed 45 million cubic centimeters of what is probably steel. Now, with the range of the fire blast, which comes into about 31 meters wide, we find the entire explosion must have been worth about 21.7337 tons of TNT. This is just from some infernal ash. That's some incredibly explosive stuff. This next one's a calculation I found on the back burner for quite a long time, and I was going to put it into a much longer How Strong Is video, but then I realized that that would mean that I would actually have to make a longer How Strong Is video, and I decided not to do that. Luckily I started doing these types of videos, and I decided that this was probably the best place to present this calculation to you guys. Now, of all the characters in this video, Doflamingo was probably the sanest of the bunch. I guess I should say he's the least crazy of them, though he's still a total and complete psychopath. However, unlike all the other characters in Feats, I'm not calculating a traditional ability for Doflamingo. Instead, I am calculating the strength of his strings. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, which is probably at least 3 of you, by eating a devil fruit called the Ito no Mi, Doflamingo was given the ability to create and manipulate strings. But not just any strings, incredibly strong strings. And I'm not even joking in the slightest. These strings are the definition of overpowered. Okay, not the definition, but you get what I'm going for. You see, in the Dressrosa arc, where Doflamingo's the big bad, you got Zoro who can cut giant mountain men in half, you got Marine Admiral Fujitora who can drop meteors on people, and then you got Trafalgar Law who just does the regular kind of mountain cutting. Every one of these characters is fighting to beat Doflamingo, and not one of them is shown to cut his strings. At first, I calculated the string strength against Fujitora's meteors, and I got a good durability, but then I compared it to Law's mountain cutting, and let's just say that it's a lot higher. I'm not going into heavy detail with Law's mountain cutting feat, because that's something I could put in a different video, but don't worry, I will tell you all the information that you need to know. Like the fact that the majority of the measurements I found are from comparing the mountain and parts of Caesar's lab to the Thousand Sunny. Okay, that was actually pretty simple. But let's get to the actual meat and tomatoes. This one panel shows a lot of the cut, but because it goes off screen, we can't see all of it. So, I decided to try and match up different panels as best I could to find the cut's full length. After a few hours, I ended up with this. And, not to brag, but I think I did a pretty good job with it. Okay, that was totally a brag. I spent several hours doing that one thing, and that shows persistence or insanity. Maybe both. Using this panel, I measured the base area of the cut to be about 1.26 million square meters. Then, by applying the ultimate shear strength of granite, 50 megapascals, and using the perimeter of the cut as displacement, I found that Law had to produce a whopping 106 megatons of TNT. However, there's a little bit more than just this. We also need to include the energy required to launch the mountain flying into the air. By measuring the mountains, I found the weight of what got launched in the air to be most likely 2.37 trillion kilograms. Now, by using the time it would take for Virgo, the person who got cut, to hit the ground, and the distance the mountain moved upward, we find it must have been accelerating at about 382.8 meters per second squared. This mountain, with this acceleration, would produce 910 trillion newtons of force on liftoff, but if we apply the total height it flew as displacement, 97.7 meters, and the energy it generated comes to be 20 megatons of TNT. So, adding the energy from both feats together, and we find that Law produced a total energy of roughly 127 megatons of TNT in just this one attack. Now, flash forward to when Law fought Doflamingo. we know that he was fighting as hard as he possibly could and even using his devil fruit. But not one time is he shown to be able to cut Doflamingo strings. This means that these strings must be able to take energy like this while it's focused on the edge of a blade. Luckily, we can get far more specific than just that. By measuring the width of Doflamingo strings against Law in this panel, we find these strings are about 0.365 centimeters wide. Assuming that Law's sword is as sharp as a razor with a thickness of 0.012 inches, which is something that I do for every blade, and we find that Law's sword was in contact with 0.0111252 square centimeters of string. Applying the energies from Law's mountain cut to this, and we find that Doflamingo strings have to be able to take about 11.4 gigatons of TNT per square centimeter. We could just end the calculation here, but let's look at Doflamingo's hockey. And luckily, it's actually quite simple to find as Law cuts through it here. By taking the width of Doflamingo's hand and the thickness of Law's blade, we find the blade is in contact with just over half a square centimeter. Dividing Law's power by the area of contact, and Doflamingo's hockey must be able to take a maximum of 1 quintillion joules per square centimeter, which translates to about 245 megatons of TNT per square centimeter. This might sound completely outlandish for a One Piece character, but when you start looking at things other characters do, it's not that crazy at all. In fact, I'm actually in the process of making a video where I calculate 40, count 'em, 40 speed feats from all across the One Piece series. If a video like that interests you in the slightest, then you should probably subscribe and give this video a like. Now, as much as I wanted to keep this video about only feats from anime, it just felt wrong to put Jokers in the title and not put down the most famous clown of all, the Joker.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are tonight's entertainment.
So, when I knew that I was going to talk about the Joker, my mind immediately went to the new Joker DLC from Mortal Kombat. But then I watched some footage and, well, let's just say it didn't really fit with the other characters that I was talking about. Though his fatality with the boxing glove does intrigue me, so I might end up talking about that at some point. Anyways, this led me to turn towards his Injustice 2 rendition.
You are a threat to my collection.
I'm a threat to pretty much everyone.
The next feat you're looking at is an ability that every character in the game has, though it probably doesn't change that much between the characters. This ability is probably one of the most important functions in the game, as it is how you activate stage transitions, the simple, but yet incredibly important combo of back X. Now, we're not going to be calculating any transitions themselves. Instead, we're going to calculate how much power this move has without a stage transition. When used on an opponent, in this case Grodd, this attack launches the opponent across the stage. Once they reach the end, they then bounce back towards your character, which in this case is the Joker. Using the time it would take for Grodd to go from 0 to max speed, over a distance of about 136.97 centimeters, we conclude that this gorilla must have been accelerating at over 3,400 meters per second squared. Because the Injustice version of Grodd weighs 600 pounds, we can find that the Joker must have produced an initial 930,000 newtons of force. However, that's not including the energy from the bounce. By following the same process as before, we end up with Grodd having hit the ground while moving at 38.58 miles per hour and the speed of his bounce to be about 23.47 miles per hour. However, Grodd was moving at 38.58 miles per hour in one direction, and then the bounce sent him moving the complete opposite direction. Accounting for this, and Grodd's rebound acceleration must be around 554 meters per second squared. Now, applying the gorilla's weight, and we get a force of about 151,000 newtons. Adding this to the previous force result, and the Joker must have hit with a total of 121 tons of force. If we map out Grodd's path of travel, 12.05 meters, and use that to displace the force, the energy the Joker must have produced comes to an impressive 13 megajoules. This might not appear to be that impressive because of the other characters in this video, but it still is. After all, the Joker is not technically a superhuman. He can still die like any other person. In fact, he has died. Many times. But, you know, this kind of gets you wondering, How strong is Batman if he can throw someone like this around? Guys, let me just say, fake psychopaths are so much better than real ones. Mostly because they're not real, and it would be horrifying otherwise. Anyways, you guys know that I don't drag out these outros very much, so, as always, if you have any ideas for characters that I should put in a video, then leave a comment down below. Thank you for watching, see you next time, remember to stay spectacular, JoJo, out.